All right, look, you can see the latest addition to my shop, a rigid belt and drum sander, not drum sander, oscillating spindle sander. So tonight we are going to start by gluing up the door, and then I'll show you how to make the jig I use to do the hinge mortises, and we'll do the hinge mortises. Um, and probably end with gluing, maybe ending with gluing in the hinge strip, or I'll just do that on my own in between, but we'll see. All right. Oh, by the way, sorry, apologies for forgetting to send out the Zoom link. And actually, I would not have remembered at all if Joe hadn't said something while I was making dinner tonight. So it was just one of those days. It's been one of those weeks. So that's what we're going to do tonight. And then next week, it'll be all focused on fitting the door to get it to have the right type of gaps and all that kind of business. And then that'll be it. That'll be all 4 lessons. So as usual, if you have questions tonight, just pop them in the chat feature and Joe will read them out to us and I'll answer them. If you have them after tonight, just put them in the community in Thinkific, and I will answer them as fast as I can after I see them. Otherwise, let's just jump right into it. All right. So in the time since last week, I made the panel for the door, the lower panel, and then I also made the upper panel as well. In terms of width, you got to remember you need to account for expansion and contraction. These are quarter sawn panels, or very close to quarter sawn. All the strips are. So I made it about a 1/16 of an inch too narrow than the actual distance between the bottom of the grooves, and that should allow for enough expansion and contraction. You know, it's winter, it's really dry, so if you live somewhere where it gets really humid and then really dry in the winter and really humid in the summer, you need to make sure that you account for that expansion. If you make it in the summer, you can fit things fairly tight because you know it's not going to get any bigger, so you can make it fairly tight. The length is pretty close to dead on because wood doesn't really expand in its length, so it's pretty much dead on. I always pre-finish my panels because, you know, right now it's probably not much of an issue, but if you make it in the summer and then it shrinks and you finish the panel after you glue up the door, then when it shrinks, wood that hasn't been finished is going to be exposed and it doesn't look nice. But if you pre-finish the panel, if it shrinks, you'll still see finished wood. But also, because there's finish on it, the glue won't constrain the wood as it begins to shrink and expand, because the glue will not stick to the finish. All right. So I've got all this stuff ready to go. I'm going to glue it up, and then while it is, then what I'm going to do is turn our attention to making the jig, and that'll take 15, 20 minutes or so, and by that time, it'll be okay to take the door out of its clamps, or by the time we get to the door, it'll be okay to take it out of its clamps and route the hinge mortises. All right, I feel like I'm going 100 miles an hour. So I've got all my parts laid out, and can you see them? Yeah, so they're laid out in the way that they're going to go together, so that I don't really have to guess about that. Before I get started, let me find the other one of these walnut jobbers. Here, I think this is it here. Remember how I needed to plug the place where the haunch got miscut because Joe moved the fence on my table saw. So I made some plugs. I made some, a repair for that today. And we'll talk about that too. All right, so I have all my parts laid out and the way that they go into the panel. And so we're ready to go. So I'm going to stand this style up and get glue down into the mortise. Well, all three mortises. So if you recall, the mortises are about 1/8 of an inch deeper than the tenon is long. And one of the reasons I do that is that when I then put glue in here and I put the tenon down in, the excess glue will get pushed down to the bottom of the mortise rather than getting like pushed up and out of the glue up, and you get a lot of squeeze out. I am going to put a little bit of glue on the inside of the rail just to it'll help hold that together. It's going to give me a little bit of squeeze out, but that's all right. When you add glue to any wood like this, assuming you're using a PVA glue, which is water-based, that's going to cause the fibers to expand a little bit. So if your joint was really way too tight to begin with, you may not get it together at this stage. So that's why you want to just hand pressure. And I am going to get an industrial whacker in case I have trouble. All right. That's good. That's good. See how this one does not want to go together. That does not. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I think. Yeah, I did a little bit of hand planing before I took it apart, and then I realized afterwards, I hand planed off all my layout lines. So I was like, I don't know what the front is anymore. All right, and you drop the panel in, and remember how I told you that once I get the shellac on there, it's going to be a tighter fit. It has a really nice fit now. See, it's not going to fall out. Last week it would have fallen out without the shellac on there. But the shellac adds just enough thickness that it won't come out. Then I pop in, that panel's loose for a reason. Which maybe next week I can explain why, just as an extra added bonus. It won't be loose when the door is completely done, I'll say that. I will say that. All right. So what I'm just spraying glue, and modern glues are crazy strong, stronger than the wood. That's for certain. And so I only put glue inside the mortise and not also on the tenon. There's some old schoolers, like Frank Klaus in that era, they would put like 6 gallons of glue in each mortise. And I never really understood that because glues are stronger than the wood, so I don't know. So always concerned about starving the joint. Now the real strength of a mortise and tenon joint, just like of any glue joint, comes from long grain to long grain surface contact. So here, it's the cheek of the tenon and the wall, that same wall of the mortise. That's where all the strength is, and so that's where you want to get the glue. It doesn't hurt to also get it like on the ends of the mortise, but it's really the sides of the mortise. That's where the strength is coming from. Put that out of the way. All right. Oh, woo!
The sound effects are good tonight.
So, I only had 3 edibles an hour ago. Just kidding.
When the edibles came.
The edibles were kicking at about 8 o'clock. Something's not lined up. Okay. That's a little. There we go. All right. Now we need some clampage. I make short extension cords for my shop because the only way I can really get extension cords with enough, designed for enough amperage for power tools, is by buying replacement cords, replacement 15 amp cords, and then just adding, instead of hooking them up to a machine or a tool, adding receptacle to them, so to speak. And I was doing that, and on the inside, it had most stuff will have a denuding gauge, so that you know how much a jacket to strip off. And it said stripping gauge, and then next to stripping gauge, it said denudage. And I was like, what? That's not even a word.
Now it is.
And now it is, though. All right, clamping that up. Denudage. Need another clamp. This next thing I'm going to do, I probably didn't really think out as well as I could have. Probably should have done before I put the clamps on, but
Is that denudaging?
no, there will be no denudaging tonight. All right. All right. I could really wait to do this until we get out of the clamps because there's no glue there yet. Let me see. I just don't. Let's see if we turn it. If I turn it like this, then maybe you can show people. I don't know how hard that is. Going to probably be next to impossible to see. But again, like the haunch does not fill in the groove.
On this side, you can see it.
You can.
On my left, your right.
Okay, so yeah, it doesn't fill in the groove. And so what I did, so in order to fill it in, you can either cut a little wedge that is long grain on the top, and it would be in grain and tap that down in. Or what I ended up doing was making a stick so it's in grain here and in grain here. So what I'm sort of doing is going to patch in it and make the groove look less deep on the top, rather than trying to make a piece match the top edge of the door. I'm just going to try to sort of match the in grain. I don't think either repair is going to look super it's not going to be invisible. So I went with the one that was easier, and it's the top of the door. And honestly, once this gets hung on a wall, no one is ever going to see it. So I have these two little sticks, and they're made to fit snugly in the groove. You want to zoom back down? They fit snugly in the groove this way. And then I sanded a slight sort of, like bevel onto the end here, which you probably are not, so that it's tapered, and that lets me get it in there and start pounding it in. But also, because it's wedged, the deeper it goes, it's going to force those glue joints, the two sides of it, and it's going to get really tight. So that'll make that glue joint harder and harder to see. So I'm just going to do a little glue. And actually, see, there was glue coming out of the mortise. There was already glue on there, so it's a good thing I'm doing this now. I am going to all right, so it bottomed out, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And I suspect by the time we cut the horns off, you're not going to be able to tell. That we're not going to be able to tell. What? Yeah. Well, I'm trying not to break it. I don't want to break it, but it's in there. All right. So normally, I would leave this in for like an hour or two, but you could leave it in for 20, 30 minutes, like we're going to. It'll be fine, especially when it's really dry right now in Connecticut. So it's gonna dry. That glue is gonna dry and set really quickly. All right. Oh, so one thing about you want to make sure that when you glue the door up, it's flat. And you could test this also, like you dry fit it and clamp it, and then set it on your saw table and see if it rocks. If there's twist in the door now, that's not good. It means that your frame parts are not flat, and that's a problem. And there probably is not, there's really not a good solution for that, unfortunately. And if it's severe enough, it's kind of like, well, you got to start over. If it's not that bad, what you can do, I'm going to stand up now. If you inset the door slightly, like I'm going to do on this cabinet, then if it's a little bit wonky, that kind of gets hidden. But if you make it flush with the front of the cabinet and it's a little bit wonky, you can't really hide that because maybe the top corners are going to be sticking out, One thing I've been told by some cabinet makers, some furniture makers, is that if they have a style that's a little bit bowed, they'll make that the hinge side, because with the hinges you can force it straight because it's clamped. The hinge mortises are where they're supposed to be, and so when you screw it in to the cabinet and then to the door, that will straighten out that style. So you could try that.
Got a couple questions.
All right, we got some questions.
Frank wants to know: do you seal or protect the paper on the upper panel in any way?
No, just living dangerously, Frank.
Andrew wants to know: do you bond the paper to plywood, and what do you use to bond it?
Yeah, it's glued to plywood. I normally glue this to 1/8-inch plywood. For a door like this, it would be 1/8-inch plywood. And I just use spray adhesive. 3M77 works. Of course, I finally found, the last class, I couldn't find my 3M77. Was it the last class? No, it was, when was it? When was it I was looking for and I couldn't find it?
And we did the book.
We did the book?
The book pictures.
Oh, I finally found it. It was behind my lathe, but it had gone bad anyways. But so 3M77 works well. You can find other ones at like fabric stores that work pretty well too. There's one that's like gray and purple, the bottle and the cap are. It's called Tacky something or another.
The kid's paste stick.
Don't use your kid's paste stick. But so I just use spray adhesive and then I glue it down to the plywood and then pop it in at this point. All right. Let's move this out of the way. And then we're going to make a jig. Crap. I'm going to leave this in the clamps. I got to take it out of the clamps. Well, I don't have to take it out of the clamps, but I'm going to have to use this again. I kind of forgot about that, but that's all right. All right. Leave those when we take them out of the clamps. What we're going to do now is one, we're going to fit the hinge strip for its height. And when I do that, I'm going to set up, I guess I'm going to use one of my miter gauges, and I'm going to put a stop on it. And when I get that to the exact right length, I'll also use that same setting to start making the jig that I'll use to route the mortises. All right. The most critical thing about the hinge mortises is that the distance between them, the two hinges, is the same on the door and the cabinet. And the jig that I'm going to make guarantees that they will be. So it takes a lot of the, it's going to take a lot of the hard work or the finicky part of mortising out of the equation. And that makes things better. And I will point out, maybe a bit defensively, that sometimes old-timers, and I don't necessarily mean that you're old, but people who think about woodworking in the old-timer way will say that, oh, you're taking all the skill out of woodworking, or you're dumbing down woodworking. And I always think it was, no, I'm just working smarter. So it's the exact opposite of dumbing it down. It's working smarter. It's using a different set of skills to accomplish the same thing. All right, so we're going to cut the hinge strip to length. All right, I'm back. We found it. It was in a piece of walnut, and I hadn't made it yet. Now, clearly what I did was, when I was cleaning up wood scraps before Joe came, I cut it up, and that was that. So I'm kind of a dum-dum. But that's okay.
Kinda.
Yeah, it's going to have to be... I can still do this now, but I'm not going to be able to glue it in tonight. I'll glue it in after class. All right, so I have this piece, and remember, it's about a 1/4 inch thick. It's a 1/4 inch thick, and you want this to be about a 1/16 of an inch, or a little bit less than a 1/16 of an inch. Its width is just a little bit over the thickness of the door, and that's so that when the door opens, the inside corner of the hinge style doesn't bind on anything. So if you have a shelf in there, or like a liner like I'm going to do, it won't bind on that. But it doesn't have to be much. It's definitely, I normally make it less than a 1/16 of an inch. And that's the part that I'll have to adjust after class tonight. All right, so I'm going to cut this to length. And then I will start to talk about the jig. Question is which? I think I can use this one. Yeah, I can use this one. Now I'm going to use this because it has a micro adjust stop on it. And, well, actually I don't know if it's going to work. Oh yeah, it'll work. All right, first things first, I'm going to square up the end. And then I'm going to mark it from the cabinet and start cutting it and trying to get it to fit in there just perfectly. So We'll leave it running while I do that. I'll move. So let's see. Let me see. I'll put the cabinet here so that you can see me marking it to length and trying to get it to fit. But I'll just run this whole process and then turn off the dust collector. You leave it running. Now, you could also sort of sneak up on that fit with a shooting board and a hand plane. You can see it. Can you zoom in? Let me see. See how it bows out a little bit? That technically means that's a smidge too long, but it will definitely clamp down flat to the cabinet. So I'm going to leave it, and because it also means there's no gaps at the top and the bottom. Just make sure there's no glue in the corner that would be messing up the fit. All right. So we're good. At this point, you want to, the at least the inside face of the hinge strip, you want to make sure that you sanded it or hand planed it or whatever it is you're going to do to it. Because after you do the mortises, you cannot take anything away from this inside, this face here, the outer face that goes into the cabinet, because that will change the depth of the mortise. And instead of your hinge being perfectly flush with the top face of the hinge strip, the hinge leaf will be proud of it, and you don't want that. So you should go ahead and clean it up now. I have the stop set on my miter gauge, and I'm gonna cut the material for the jig now. And what I have is 2 pieces of MDF. One of them, if I remember correctly, is 4 inches wide, and the other is 3 inches wide. Those numbers are not critical. The wider one needs to be wide enough for you to sit a router on comfortably. So, 4 to 5 inches is probably good. The other one is just going to be a fence for the jig, and the height of it is not as critical, or the width of it. But what I'm going to do now is cut those both to the same length as the hinge strip. All right. Rock and roll up. So what I'm going to do to make this jig is get my hinges. I'll get to my hinges. I thought I got more sets of these hinges than 2. It's not. What we're going to do is locate where the hinges go on the jig, and we're going to cut notches that are so that the hinge leaf fits in there perfectly. Cut notches. And the notch will guide a router bearing bit and allow us to route out a mortise that fits the hinge leaf perfectly. And the reason, like sometimes I'll see people and they'll just make one and they use it for all 4 mortises. The reason I do it this way is because we're going to cut both mortises in this and then use it for the hinge strip and then also for the door. And that way the distance between the hinges is guaranteed to be the same on both the hinge strip and on the door. And it eliminates one place where you can have things go awry. All right. What I'm going to do now is take the door out of the clamps, which it's probably been drying long enough that it's going to be fine, right? Fingers crossed. And there's a reason I need to do that. I think it's nice about these little bench horses that I have is that when you loosen the clamps, the door doesn't go cattywampus or fall out or anything. It's kind of nice. Cattywampus. Well, it'd be really embarrassing if my door wasn't flat, wouldn't it?
Can't be worse than cutting up your hinge strip.
Yeah. It is a tiny, tiny little bit not flat. I'm not worried about it though. All right. So it's normal for on a door that the hinges go or placed. The top hinge is just either in line with the bottom of the top rail or just below it, and then the bottom hinge is just above or in line with the top edge of the bottom rail. And so that's why I needed to take the door out of the clamps so that I can now mark that on my jig. Okay. What I'm gonna do now? Watch. Woo, man, that's not good, kids. The door is like. I better double check some stuff. That's a 1/16 of an inch. I'll have to take that off the bottom rail. Make sure I do that. All right. So somehow my mortises made the doors a little bit too tall by about a 1/16 of an inch, which is a pretty sizable error. But my bottom rail is a 1/4 inch wider than the top rail, so I have some room to play with there. If I take a 1/16 off there, it still will be the difference will still be noticeable, which is kind of, you want that. I like to have the bottom rail be wider than the top rail, but it gives me enough room that I can take material off there and not have it end up being too narrow. All right. So what I'm going to do is reference off the top of my door. The end of the jig is flush with the top of my door. And I'm going to mark where just a tiny bit inside the rail, at the top and at the bottom. And then I'm going to get a saddle square. Where's my saddle square? I saw it earlier. Must still be out. Here it is. And I'm just going to bring those tick marks up onto the face of this piece of MDF. Can you show them that? All right, so this is the top and this is the bottom. All right, I'll hold it like that. Make it easier. Now what I'm going to do is use the hinge itself to lay out the other side of the notch that we need to make. So take the hinge, take a square, and I'm going to put the hinge on top of the line. And then pull it away and draw another line against, the square. So now I have 2 lines, and that indicates the lines will be cut away because the hinge is on top of both the lines. So the lines are going to get cut away. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. So cover up the first line that I drew with the hinge, butt the square up against the hinge, pull it away, and draw a second line. So I can leave it down. So these layout lines show me where the notches, where we're going to cut notches. There we go. You can see that now. The other thing that we need to know is how far in to cut. And that is determined by this. And I'm just going to tell you that when you use a butt hinge, half of the barrel should be, in a sense, outside the cabinet. In this case, it's going to be outside the hinge strip. Let me grab the hinge strip. Let's. Can you zoom in on this?
I'll just tight as I can.
Okay. Can you focus if I come in?
No.
All right. So the hinge barrel, half of it should be in front of the hinge strip or the front edge of your cabinet. I don't know if that's actually what's happening here, but that's what we want to know. So what I do is, and it doesn't matter which leaf you reference off of, because each leaf is the same distance from the center of the hinge barrel. What I'm going to do is take, you can take a combination square. I'm going to use this little, I think it's called a cabinet maker square or something. And I'm just going to eyeball this. And set that so that a pencil line will fall in the center of the barrel, using this to draw it. The other thing you can do is actually like measure, and I see that the total width of this hinge is, when it's closed, is 3/4 of an inch. Oh, sorry. Let me take that back. This is 1 1/4. But see, that doesn't really get you to the center. Even this doesn't. It's like, oh, well, where's the center still? It's about at 1 No, it's about 5/8. And this is set to 5/8. So yeah, it's almost like I kind of know what I'm doing. So I'm going to take this now and draw a line on both. So you can see that what we're going to do is remove the material inside here. And we're going to do it on both pieces, both the fence and the plate of the jig. All right, so let me set my door to the side. Step aside and let the man come through. And I'm going to get out my crosscut sled, clean away all this junk. All right, hinge strip is in the cabinet. I'll put a tape on it and say, "Do not cut up or throw away."
No question.
No more questions? Anybody want to ask a question while I'm doing this changeover bit? No.
Not yet.
Okay, kids.
Oh,
There's a question.
James says, are the hinges pretty close tolerance? Yes.
Oh yeah, these hinges are really nice hinges. You want to use nice hinges.
Are those the ones from Connecticut?
These are not from Horton Brasses. These are the ones from Whitechapel. Whitechapel.
And then some hinges have a lot of wobble. These do not. Yeah. Yeah. Spend a little extra money on it. On hinges.
Trying to like sort of. All right, I guess I'll have to do it from this side. What I'm going to use is 2 different stops to just determine where I'm going to cut. So this stop over here is set up for this side. And then there'll be another stop over here set for that side. Now, one thing, because I do use a bottom rail that's wider than my top rail, the distance from the end of the MDF to the mortise or the notch is not the same. So we're going to have to, in some ways it's like, why even set up stops? I don't know why I'm setting up stops. We don't need to. But it kind of helps initially to just, that's 1.5.
Because you gotta make 2. That's why.
This is almost 1 3/4. Well, no, because I have to set the blade height, so I might as well just.
If you wanted to flatten the door, what options do you have? Drum sander?
No, because a drum sander, like a planer, even if it's not, what it'll do is just press it down and sand it, and then when it comes out, it comes back up. Really, the only way to flatten the board is a jointer. And so you can't run a door across a jointer. You could hand plane it, I guess, and flatten it that way, but you'd have to that would be kind of tricky. If it's really so bad that it's wobbling on a flat surface, you can't use it. Sometimes the best thing to do is just start over. If it's mine was a tiny little bit, the hinges will take that out. But I could also probably lightly hand plane it and bring it back into flat. But you could, really the only thing you could do is try to hand plane it and take that twist or whatever it is out. But if it's bad, you just need to start over. But that's the kind of thing, like as you're milling and making it, you got to keep an eye on that. And don't get to the point where it's like, I glued up my door and I'm ready to install it, but it's all wonky, because then you're gonna be falling for that false economy fallacy where it's like you're gonna start throwing good money after bad when what you really need to do is just cut your losses and start over. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna set the blade height and then I'm gonna cut these things. And I'll show you a trick to get it exactly on the pencil line without using a stop or anything. All right, I'm going to wear my respirator because MDF drives me nuts. I'll go crazy on MDF. It's like PCP for me. Just kidding. All right.
Okay, alright, you see him there? Alright. Wait. Jeff, I'm gonna do the other end now. Oh my god. That was messy.
If I ever have an apprentice, that's the first thing I'm teaching the apprentice how to do is cut MDF that way. And I'll never do it again. It's freaking everywhere now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let me grab my chisel real quick. Should have put in a flat tooth grind blade because it would have cut better into the corners. I gotta come in here with this chisel. Get Hello, winter. Go away. All right. I'm just cleaning out these corners. Are there any questions about what I just did? And yes, it is safe to do that. If you're like you noticed it was against a fence. Normally I would have 2 stops there. But I just with there's things too, in a sense I'm controlling the workpiece with the fence and everything. Now definitely it's something that it takes a certain amount of, I guess, experience to get the confidence to do that. But it is safe. And you're just using a little bit of the front of the blade at a time to cut that way. All right. No questions, Joseph?
Nope.
All right.
Negatory.
The real question will be, or the real thing is will the hinges fit in there tightly? Hopefully they do. If they don't, if it's like a one-time, you're just making this for one door, you could put some tape in there to shorten up, to make it fit tighter. If it's too tight, you can just, adjust it with a table saw. Now there's MDF and dust in my water.
Mm.
Oh. Now there's MDF in my stomach. It's like eating paper plates when you're a kid. Gonna have paper babies.
Could you use that technique with plywood?
Yeah, and you can use it with solid wood too.
Not just MDF.
Yeah. All right, it's a little bit tight. So what I'm going to do is adjust here and here on all these parts. All right, so just need to. All right, will you turn on the dust collector?
Yeah.
Man, that really made a lot of dust. That's a good fit. Right. So the notches in the top part, the plate, so to speak, where the router's going to sit, those need to be dead accurate. The notches in the fence are not, they don't matter at all. They're really there just to create clearance for the router bit. That's it. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is screw this to the edge of the plates, the top plate. All right. I just want to make sure that I clean. See, that's not quite flat. This one is, but this is not. But the bearing is going to ride up here, so it'll route that. It will route that. Let me double check that real quick. It's not. It's not even going to be that deep. It's going to be more like. Yeah, so I'm okay because it is going to ride it back there where it is the right height. That seems. Let me just double check. These are the same. That's good. That's good. Okay, so we're in the money. All right. Got to screw this together. So we're going to move over to the workbench now. Do you want to stop and change the battery out and all that?
Sure.
So we'll take like 3 or 4 minutes. We need to change the battery out in the camera, and we're going to move over to the workbench. So, go to the bathroom, get yourself a drink.
So far.
So far? All right. Well, let's get started again. So I'm going to screw the fence onto the top plate of the jig. And just to sort of explain why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it, or where the fence is going where it is because remember the top plate, the front edge of the top plate represents the front edge of the door, so to speak, or the outside edge of the front of the door. It's a little tight. That's all right. So we want that.
Did you switch hinges?
No. Over that. It's just not. It doesn't quite go to halfway. Does it? It doesn't. No, but that's okay because of the hinge strip, which is going to be inset a little bit. We actually kind of want it to be a little bit further out, so that's okay. It's not quite halfway, and I can see why. Yeah. I should have gone a little bit. I should have cut away this line, and then it would have been perfection. But that's okay. It'll still work. So the front edge of the top plate should be in line with the front edge of the door and the front edge of the front of the door and the front edge of the door. So if we did it like this, then it wouldn't work. So, but if we do it like this, then the inside face of the fence registers off the front of the door and brings the front edge of the top plate in perfectly where it's supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is put the top plate down in my vise. And clamp it. And jig clamp it. Jig clamp it. And now I'm going to screw the fence on. It goes like this. Because, yeah, it's this top. You could set it just a little bit lower than the top face up here so that it doesn't get in the way of the router. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put a screw right here. Woo! That stuff is ½ inch, is maybe a... Alright. I have the number 8 square drive instead of the number 6 square drive. That's going to split. That's gonna split, children, but not like a banana. Alrighty. That's good there. And let's do another one about here. It's probably all we need is 2. All right. So we're all set to use this. Now I will tell you this, the way that I do this, with this, you could make this so that either side could be used with the router. It's a little fussier to make and get everything lined up, so I don't do that. But so this is now set, and it'll allow us to route either the hinge strip or the door, and then we'll have to flip the fence over the other way to do the other one, because we can't. Well, we can't just do that. I mean, in theory you could, but I normally don't. All right, so what are we going to do? Let's figure this out, ladies and gentlemen. If we're going to do the door first, I'm going to have to... Nope. It goes like this. So this is set up for the hinge strip. But I need to cut these horns off anyway. So why don't... Joe already moved the camera. You can just turn the camera over it. So I'm going to cut the horns off. Just to kind of, they don't have to be cut off right now, but I want to get them out of the way. So I'm going to do that. I'm just going to trim them down. Trim them down. All right, yeah, you can. That's a square door because that cut perfectly. Can you zoom in like on one of these? So this is one of the ones where I made the repair. Can you see it? You can barely see it, but it's there, right? Can you see it, Jeff?
I mean,
Yeah, just barely, right? By the time that gets probably hand planed a little and then sanded, you probably won't be able to tell at all. So, all right. We're doing the hinge strip first, as I said. So let me get the old hinge strip, kids.
David wants to know, take a keen eye to see that. Oh,
yes.
That's not a question.
That's not a question, David. It would take a keen eye. And like I said, it's going to be on the top of the door. Once it's hung, no one's ever going to see it. And when they, no one would ever know it's there. Except for me.
I mean.
And you and all those people out there in TV land.
Zoomland.
In Zoom land. Zoomlandia. All right. I'm just looking to see which one is the front edge. This is the front edge. So I'm going to write on here. It'll be obvious after I've routed the mortises, but I'm still going to do that. Joe, the thing is I got to kind of do it right down here.
Wonderful.
Inside. That means that's the top. So if you remember, I had this was flush with the top edge of the door, and it's also flush, like this would butt up against the top of the cabinet when it's put inside the opening. So I'm going to put the hinge strip flush with that as well. And this is going to go down here. And I'm going to have to do that again, get it flush. All right, now it's flush. And it's going to rock back like that. So what I'm going to do, where did I put the offcut from that? Here it is. Put the offcut under there just to hold it. We are, of course, going to clamp this all together. Going to just clamp it. Why do I keep saying that? Because it's really stupid. Ooh, okay.
That's what I thought too.
All right, okay, all right. Let me clamp it down. I gotta make sure it. The hinge strip is the trickier of the two, but I will deal with that. That's tight there. That just needs to get forced up before I put another clamp on. All right.
So much fun.
Yeah, I hate MDF. Slightly less offensive than normal MDF is ultra lightweight MDF. But I can't, they don't sell that at my Home Depot.
They don't sell it at your Menards.
At my Menards. Alright. So that stuff's not going anywhere. And I'll definitely be able to get there and there. And then get there. Ooh, just barely, but it gets in there. Alright. Now we need to set the depth that the plunge router is going to cut to. So I'm just going to plunge it down until it touches the hinge strip, which it's doing now. And then I'm going to take my hinge and put it between the stop. Ooh, here comes Joe down close. So you can see that the bit has been plunged down. It's touching the hinge strip.
Mm-hmm.
All right, look at that camera work. And now I'm going to put the hinge on top of the turret, lower the stop down until the hinge leaf is pinched between the turret and the stop, and then lock it. And now the router will plunge to the exact correct depth, which is the thickness of the leaf. All right. So look at this. Now we've gotten three things taken care of when it comes to fitting a hinge leaf or hinges, I should say. The distance between the two hinges is going to be the same on both doors. The length of the mortise and the depth of the mortise are going to be the same on all four mortises. And the depth of the mortise is going to be spot on when we're done. So, like, all the real challenge of doing it by hand has been taken care of with a different skill set that is just as, in a sense, challenging to master as not as difficult as doing it by hand, but I can show you this on Zoom and you can go away and do it. It's a little bit harder to show you, all the tricks of the trade for a hand cut one and have you go away and have success. But you'll have success doing this. Most of you will. Probably one of you won't, but we won't make fun of you. All right, I'm gonna get my chair to sit in. I got to. We're not gonna worry about the vacuum. It's inside the house.
Just gonna say, I don't see it.
Yeah, I took it in the house to vacuum out my pantry cupboard in the kitchen. I had some midnight visitors in there recently. An old New England home in the winter.
Right behind that.
All right. Now, the bit that I'm using, we'll show you that here before we get going. So, we haven't seen this bit yet for this class. This is a type of bit that is sometimes called a dado cleanout bit, or it's just a stubby little pattern bit. So the bearing you see here is going to ride on the template that we made, and then the bearing's going to cut it. And it does have to be really short, because unless you're going to make your template out of like 1-inch thick material, but this kind of bit is useful for a lot of different things. It's useful for hinge mortises. I use it sometimes to clean out the waste between pins when I'm cutting dovetails, but not very often. Mostly I use it for precisely this, for hinge mortises. And they're not, it's not very expensive. And CMT makes them, Infinity has them, Lee Valley has them.
Sana or whatever.
Amana. Amana does. Amana. Oh, and I put a link to one in Thinkific. So I think it was to the Lee Valley one, or at least I put the name of it, what Lee Valley calls it. Lee Valley's a good company. You should buy things from Lee Valley when you need them. So Infinity is also, those are good people. There's other companies where you can buy things from that sell woodworking stuff that I personally don't buy stuff from. Not because I dislike them, but I like the people at Lee Valley. I know them. They're good people. I know the people at Infinity. Also good peoples. Infinity's in Florida too. Got to support the native state. All right. Enough talking. Let's get routing.
Wow. One handheld. Bear with me. I might get sheet.
Which one do you want me to do first? This one?
Doesn't matter. Here for you, Matt.
So once I was teaching someone to do this in my shop here, and I think we were making a box. And it was in my old shop. And I said, all right, now listen, the one thing you cannot do is plunge the bit into the template, because once you do that, the template is screwed up and we can't use it. So what is the first thing the guy did? He plunged the bit right into the template, like right where the bearing should be riding. I was like, all right, well, we'll just have to make a new one. All right, what we're going to do before we take the template off is square up the corners using the template as a chisel guide. So now one thing that I don't personally understand, and I haven't had a chance to complain to anybody about, or ask about, I should say, ask first, complain later, is that pattern bits never seem to actually cut flush to the pattern. They always seem to cut a little bit less, so I have a feeling that the hinge may not really fit in here without some more work. Which is also why, sometimes I'll I'll take the chisel and just make sure that it actually is flush to the template, the mortise, that is. All right, just come in this way, get rid of any waste that's down there. Am I getting in the way of the camera?
Mm-mm.
All right. So let's do this in down here. Let's do this one down here, kids. Now, actually, so you can see now, it actually routed a little bit deeper into the template. You know, can you see the difference? Yeah. So you see how these striations are from the table saw blade. Down here where it's really smooth, that's from the router bit, and you can see that little lip there. And that's because the bit and the bearing are not perfectly aligned. And I'm going to write a letter to my congressman. My congressperson, my congresswoman, actually. And she'll say, listen, stop writing us letters every week about pattern bits. Her name is Joanna something. I can't remember her last name right now. It's a good thing I'm wearing Arid Extra Dry today. I don't know, do you get that reference?
I do. They don't see that I'm hanging out under your armpit though.
Get a little closer. No, don't be shy.
What about raise your hand if you're sure?
Yeah, that's just for sure. I haven't seen a deodorant commercial in so long. That's because no one wears deodorant. They just wear patchouli now. When I was in college, there were I went to a liberal arts college, so there were a lot of crunchy granola people. And that was like one of the things for me. If I went on a date with a girl and she smelled like patchouli, it was over. It's like, nope, I'm not dating no patchouli wearing person. It's actually still something I live by. I meet someone that smells like patchouli.
Andrew says Lee Valley is a good Canadian company.
They are Canadian, yeah. And it's still family owned, and there's good people that work there.
Yeah, hey?
Yeah. And Infinity is owned by, by U.S. people in the United States down in Tampa. David, his last name starts with a V. I can't remember what it is, but it starts with a V.
It's a good story.
Yeah, good story, right? Hey man, that's a really good story you just told us. Hey, thanks, kids.
Thanks for coming in today.
All right, let's check the pudding. It's a little bit tight, but it still fits. All right. It feels like it's maybe not quite deep enough right there. Like the router might have tilted, and it did just a little bit. Just a little bit, but I've taken care of that, I believe. And you see, I can see right here where I didn't quite, because of I couldn't pare back all that way because the bit undercut the template a little, which actually is going to work out in my favor because if you remember, I thought the template was not quite far enough back as I would want it to be. So I think that's going to work in my favor. All right, it seems to be a little tight. So this is when I adjust them by hand, I always adjust the inside ones. Because if you remember, the top one here is in line with the bottom of the rail. Am I? Well, this is the top here, but it doesn't matter, top or the bottom. So I'm just going to do a little pear job. And really hope that it's not completely bungled now. It's a smooge, smish, smoshed looser probably than, but it's still good. All right, and is it deep enough? I think so, but it's not straight back here. Man, it would have been totally awesome if this was actually perfect out of the template, wouldn't it?
It wasn't that kind of day.
No. I mean, I personally was perfect out of the template. But I'm no longer perfect all the time. All right, so that's good. That's good. I would say it could still like I could make it inset a little bit more, and that would not be a bad thing. But I'll probably wait and see on that. All right, let's test this other one, and it's probably going to have roughly the same problem. Yeah. All right.
Any questions?
Hanging a door is one of the more fussy things that you can do in woodworking. And so it does take patience, and it takes, it's not that I somehow screwed up here. It's that this is the type of work it takes to get the hinges to fit really well, and for the door to fit really well. You got to be willing to work slow and get things just right. Here we go. Now, the one thing to remember is, so when I made adjustments to the mortise up down here, this other mortise, when I make adjustments on the door, which I should have to, I need to make them on the same side of the mortise. Yeah. This is actually just a little bit too tight. So I'm going to take a tiny little bit off. Sometimes if it feels like I can sort of get it started, I'll tap it in with a hammer and sort of press out the mortise that way. All right. That looks pretty nice, doesn't it? All right, so that's good. Could be a little bit tighter. All right. So that's the hinge strip. It's done. And now I can move on to the door. Do we have any questions about what I've done so far before I move on?
Negative.
Negative. All right. I'm just going to stare into the camera. All right. Door, please. Mr. Joseph. All right. Now, you got to start thinking, or you got to keep thinking, which side of the door do the hinges go on? All right. Now, I still have my layout lines, so I know that this is my triangles. I know this is the front of the door, and I'm doing a left side hinge. Goes like this. So the hinge mortises are going on the left-hand side. And the mortise does not go out here on the front of the stile. All right? And this is something I actually have to. I usually always stop and think about. Wait a minute, where does the mortise go? So the mortise goes on the edge of that stile. I hope that this door fits down in between the screws of my vise. And, well, no, but that's good enough. That's enough. All right. Whoops. Just slipped right in. All right. Clamp that. Nice and tight. Get that out of the way. All right. Wait a minute.
You gotta flip it.
Because I do, because it's got to be like that. So what I need to do is move this around. So I'm going to do that right quick like, which is what my friend Randy Dingle would say when we were kids. He was
Rob, oh, go ahead.
he was from Kentucky, so he would say right quick like.
Rob says, is there a preferred way a cabinet door should open, or does it depend on how and where it will be used?
In a single door cabinet, no. It can, I guess, all right, if you're making a cabinet and it's going to go, it's kind of like a refrigerator, right? If it's close to the corner of a room, you don't want to open it away from the other wall, because then you kind of like have to get over into the corner to get into the cabinet. You'd want to open that door up against the other wall. But outside of restrictions like things like that, no, it doesn't matter which way it swings open. There's something of sort of an aesthetic thing, or maybe there's a little bit of an ergonomic thing that's sort of built into us. So if this were a cabinet, let me grab the cabinet. All right, so yeah. So if this cabinet also had, let's say, drawers over here, and you put the hinges here so it swung open like that, and then it's sort of in the way of the drawers, that's weird. That doesn't work. So you would want to open it up this way, and then there would still be all that clearance for the doors and everything. But you do have to think about things like that. But on a cabinet like this, there's really it can open either way. One of the ways that I think about it is, I of course like, okay, well, which hand do I use to open up doors with? And if you're right-handed, you tend to go and open up like this. If you're left-handed, you would want to open it up like this. That's one thing one consideration you could take into account. But obviously, I'm not doing that here. I put the hinge over here. I'm right-handed, so that I can open it up like that. But it does mean now I can't put it in a corner where there's a wall coming this way, because then when you open it, you got to like kind of get over against the wall to get into it, I suppose. But so yeah, there are constraints like that, but there's not a general rule or a general overarching principle about which side to put the hinges on. It's really like, where's this cabinet going? What's the circumstances in which this cabinet's going to be used? What's around it? So that determines which side you'd want the hinges on. Does that make sense, Andrew? Was that Andrew that asked that?
That was Rob.
That was Rob. Sorry, Rob. There's probably not even an Andrew in the class.
There's definitely an Andrew in the class.
Okay.
He asked the question before.
Oh, that's why. It's Andrew, and I know his last name too. LaRock.
He nailed it.
I did?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. Let me get this straight. All right, so here's the top. So it's got to go like this. It's got to go like this, which means my fence has got to go like this. The good news is I already have holes drilled, and they should still work out for me. This really seems like a bad idea. What I'm doing. Not clamping it in, but
Not folding it. Okay.
this really seems like I'm being stupid right now. I don't really want to do that, but okay, it done did happen. Ugh. Do not want to do that. I should not have said that. Because it's split the MDF. Arrgh. All right, kids. So again, I'm going to align the top edge, or this end of the template with the top edge of my door. And then I'm going to get my little Bessies. Bessie. You don't meet people named Bessie much anymore, do you?
Not in Connecticut.
I have a feeling that was like if you were born in 1927,
It's probably popular.
Bessie was a popular name.
Probably gonna get black because it's probably somebody's mom's name or something.
Wow.
So the MDF dust is rampant.
Yeah, it is. It's
It's still like catching on stuff.
yeah, it's freaking everywhere.
It is 9 o'clock.
Oh, it's 9 o'clock. All right. Well, so I'm going to route this out real quick, and then next week we'll pick up with drilling out holes for it, and I'll put some links or something in Thinkific about the specific type of bit I'm going to use. It's the brand. I guess it's a brand name is Vix bit. It's a self-centering drill bit, and I think Vix is the brand.
Not the Vicks you put under your nose when you're sick.
No,
Different kind of Vicks.
it's VIX. And it's not something I borrowed from Vic Teslin, so it's not VIC''S.
Copy.
All right, I'm going to route these out real quick and square them up, and then we can break end it for the night. Think about your questions so I can answer them before I go.
And then it'll be beer time for Matt and Joe.
Yeah. Smells weird in there.
A little funky.
Might be time to change those filters. I'm just going to clean up the corners. Let me get in here and clean up this one. When you're doing this, you do want to be careful not to tip the router out that way, because that front edge of the mortise you'll see when the hinge is in there, and you don't want a gap to be there. If you were to screw this mortise up, if you screw up the hinge strip, you just make a new one. If you screw the door up at this point, you
Make a new one.
no, you fit a patch in there and you glue it in, and then you reroute the mortise. Because most of it's going to get routed out anyways, so it doesn't, you just do a patch. I wouldn't even be all that particular about the patch, I mean, you definitely want to make it be the same species of wood. And I would let that dry. I would put that patch in and probably let it dry overnight, because the unless your mistake was like a half inch or something, but if it's just a little bit off, and you want to patch it and redo it, there'll be so little material left after you route it again, that you want to make sure it's good and dry so it doesn't just flake off.
David says, wondering if next week you can touch on installing knife hinges, or is that another full day?
That's a whole nother class. They're so... The whole thing is different, because you have to mortise the cabinet before you assemble it, and you have to, it's just a whole different can of worms. Like, you have to assemble the cabinet and dry, and then make the door and get the gaps at the top and the bottom just right. And then you can mortise the cabinet, and then you mortise the door. And if you get those gaps wrong at the top and the bottom, it's kind of hard to recover from. So it's like this, it's a whole nother species. It's so different and so much more demanding that it's not something I can really explain to you in 10 minutes. Other than what I just told you. Which was like the super fast overview.
Rob wants to know, if our cabinet has shelves in it, would you recommend gluing the shelves in before or after installing the door?
Oh, I don't think it really matters. I guess, you could do it before, and you just want to make sure that the cabinet, that the shelves should be just slightly inset from the depth of the door. So if your door is 5/8 of an inch thick, you would want that shelf to come up, to be inset like 5/8 from the front of the cabinet, 5/8 plus, a 1/16. So that, again, as the door swings open, the inside edge of the hinge style doesn't hit it and bind against it. You have to have that little bit of clearance. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. So what I would do now, take the template off, make sure the hinges fit. If they don't fit, again, I'm going to adjust them on the same side that I did the hinge strip. All right. And that really should be actually the top of the hinge mortise, regardless of whether it's the top or the bottom hinge mortise. It should be the top and not the bottom. Yeah, and I screwed that up before, but that's all right. But it should be the top, because if you get the top of the two mortises on the hinge strip and the door a little misaligned, it doesn't matter. But if you get the bottom misaligned, that will make a difference. So you want to do the top of both hinge mortises, no matter if it's the top or the bottom hinge. All right, does that make sense? Any other questions? No? Alright.
Have a nice life.
Alright then. Any kind of response? I'm going to say goodbye. Goodbye. Alright. See you next week. Have a good weekend.
Do the goodbye again.
Do the goodbye.